Stop. Before you close this video, ask yourself one question. Do you really think your cat just sleeps next to you by accident? That she's just looking for a warm spot, not for you? In reality, every single night your cat performs a whole series of actions that most owners never even notice. She kneads the blanket with her paws, lies down right next to your head, watches you as you fall asleep. And this isn't random, and it isn't just an animal habit. It's a language in which your cat tells you about her feelings, we just don't know how to read it. Today, I'll show you 7 of these signals. And trust me, after this video, you'll look at your cat completely differently. Watch closely. Here, she is kneading the blanket with her paws, as if kneading dough, just like she did as a kitten next to her mother. And here she settles right by your head, not at your feet, not on the floor, not in another room. See this moment? She climbs right onto your chest and listens to your heartbeat. And now, purring. Quiet, barely audible, right before she finally falls asleep. Here she is scratching at the closed bedroom door, persistently, insistently, as if she physically needs to be near you. And this, she brings you something in the middle of the night, placing it right by your pillow. And the last one, the most touching, she simply watches. Watches you fall asleep, never looking away, as if guarding your sleep. 7 moments, 7 seconds. But behind each of them lies an entire story about what's going on in your cat's mind when she thinks you can't see her. Let's break down each one in order. So, if even one of these scenes felt familiar, stay with me, because today's video is exactly for you. We'll go through 7 things your cat does every night and explain what's really behind each of these actions. Because cats aren't dogs. They don't wag their tails with joy, don't lick you from head to toe, don't leap toward you in delight. Their language is much quieter, much subtler. And that's exactly why many owners live alongside a cat for years without ever suspecting just how attached she is to them. We'll talk not only about what a cat does, but why she does it from the standpoint of her instincts, her evolution, and her psychology. You'll learn what each of her nighttime movements actually means, from the simple kneading of paws to silently watching over your sleep. And by the end of this video, you might just realize your cat is far more affectionate and caring than you ever thought. Deal? Then let's start with the first one, and it'll surprise even experienced cat owners. Before we get to the first one, let me say a few quick words, short, no lecturing. If you're interested in cats, their behavior, their psychology, and how their attachment to people really works, this channel has plenty of videos like this, and there will be more. We don't cover myths or cute internet pictures, but real research, real animal behavior, and what's actually behind these habits. So if you watch this video to the end, and I'm sure you will, because the 7th point will surprise even longtime cat owners, consider subscribing to the channel. It takes 3 seconds, and you'll get everything new we publish on this topic. The same goes for liking this video. It might sound cliche, but likes and comments are exactly what helps YouTube show videos like this to more people who also love cats and want to understand them better. No more pushy requests after this, I promise. Just if you find this material useful or interesting, support the channel with 1 click. And now, the main part. Let's move to the first habit on our list, something practically every cat on the planet does, yet almost no one stops to think about where this habit comes from or what it really means. So, kneading with the paws. A familiar movement, right? Let's break down what's behind it. Kneading with the paws, or as it's scientifically called, milk treading behavior. You've probably seen it hundreds of times. A cat climbs onto a blanket, a couch, or even right onto you, and starts rhythmically pressing down with her front paws, alternating left and right, sometimes extending her claws, sometimes not. Many owners think of this as just a funny habit, something like stretching before sleep. But in reality, the roots of this behavior go back to a cat's earliest kittenhood. When a kitten is born, she's still blind and completely dependent on her mother. To stimulate milk production, kittens instinctively press their paws against their mother's belly, exactly like this, rhythmically, alternating paws. This movement is directly tied to a feeling of safety, warmth, and being fed. It's one of the very first experiences of pleasure and security a cat has in her life. And here's what matters. An adult cat who continues this movement years later is essentially returning to that exact emotional state. She's not just stretching her paws, she's unconsciously recreating the feeling of complete safety she once felt with her mother. Now think about this. If she does this on you, next to you, on your clothes or your blanket, it means that you are the one triggering that exact feeling of security and calm in her. You become the emotional equivalent of her mother. What's more, some animal behavior researchers note that cats who were weaned early may perform this movement even more intensely as a form of self-soothing in stressful situations. But if your cat does this calmly, unhurriedly, with closed eyes and purring, it's a pure signal of trust and comfort, not anxiety. So next time your cat starts kneading dough right on your lap before bed, know this: it's not random and it's not just muscle stretching. It's one of the most sincere ways a cat can say, "I feel safe and calm next to you." The next habit is probably familiar to almost every cat owner. You go to bed and instead of settling somewhere on the floor, on a chair, or at the foot of the bed, your cat climbs right up to your head, onto the pillow beside you, into your hair, sometimes even partly onto your face, which isn't always comfortable, but is incredibly touching once you think about why she does it. At first glance, it seems like it's just about warmth. The area near your head really is a bit warmer, there are fewer drafts, it's more comfortable there. And that's partly true. But if it were only about temperature, a cat would choose any warm spot in the house, not specifically the area right by your face while you sleep. There's a deeper reason here. The thing is, cats have an incredibly sharp sense of smell, and scent is one of their main ways of identifying their own. The area around your head, face, and hair is where your individual scent is most concentrated. By settling exactly there, a cat literally surrounds herself with your scent, which she associates with safety, familiar territory, and, importantly, with you personally. It's similar to how a small child wants to fall asleep hugging something of their mother's that smells like her. There's another behavioral aspect too. In the wild, cats are extremely vulnerable while sleeping. It's the one moment when they don't fully control what's happening around them. By choosing to sleep near your face rather than at a distance, a cat is essentially saying, "I trust you enough to be vulnerable right here, next to you." This isn't just about comfort, it's about her perceiving you as part of her safe pack. Even though cats aren't technically pack animals, but they build a very similar emotional bond with people. On top of that, the sound of a person's breathing and heartbeat, which the cat hears and feels so closely, has a soothing effect on her. It's a kind of white noise that helps her fall asleep faster too. So if your cat persistently makes her way to your head every night, even if you gently move her away, know this: it's not just a convenient spot in the apartment. It's a conscious choice in favor of closeness to you, rooted in scent, trust, and the need for safety. Another habit is familiar to those whose cat likes to settle right on top of them, most often on the chest or stomach, especially in those moments when you've already lain down but haven't fallen asleep yet. The cat jumps up, gets comfortable, sometimes even lightly kneads you with her paws, and freezes in that exact position. The first thing to understand: a cat doesn't choose the chest or stomach by accident. It's not just a flat surface that's comfortable to lie on, there are dozens of surfaces like that around the house. The reason is that it's in the chest and stomach area where she most clearly hears your heartbeat and breathing. And rhythmic, steady sounds are one of the most powerful natural safety signals for any living creature, cats included. Kittens, lying next to their mother, are calmed in exactly the same way by the sound of her heart. That feeling of someone alive, stable, and reliable is nearby is established from the very first days of life. The second point is temperature. The chest and stomach area of a human is usually warmer than the limbs, and cats, as we know, love warmth and instinctively seek out the warmest spots in their environment. But if it were only about warmth, a cat would just as likely lie on a radiator or a warm blanket. She chooses you specifically. The third, and perhaps the most interesting aspect, is territorial. Cats have scent glands on their paw pads and body that release pheromones, which act as a kind of marker. By lying on you and lightly kneading the surface with her paws before settling down, a cat is literally marking you as hers, as part of her safe territory. This is very similar to how a cat rubs her head against furniture or your legs, only a far more intimate and vulnerable version of that behavior. because she's doing it while in a state of complete trust, lying motionless on top of you. It's worth noting the flip side too. If a cat lies on your chest, specifically in moments when you're anxious, sighing, or tossing and turning, some animal behavior researchers link this to cats' sensitivity to micro movements and changes in their owner's breathing, meaning the cat may be unconsciously calming a person who's feeling anxious. So if your cat chooses your chest or stomach as her favorite place to sleep, it's not just about warmth and comfort. It's quite literally physical closeness to your heart in the most direct sense of the word. The next habit is purring before sleep. Quiet, steady, almost lulling. You've probably heard it dozens of times as your cat settles in next to you in the evening. And most people see it simply as a sign that the cat is happy and comfortable. That's partly true, but there's much more behind this sound than it seems at first glance. Let's start with the fact that purring isn't just a sound of pleasure. Scientists are still studying the mechanism behind it, but one thing is certain. The frequency of purring, typically in the range of 25 to 150 Hz, has a pronounced calming and, as some studies suggest, even regenerative effect, both for the cat herself and, presumably, for those nearby. Cats purr not only out of joy, but also in moments of stress, pain, and sometimes even before giving birth, meaning purring functions as a kind of self-soothing mechanism. That's exactly why purring before sleep carries a double meaning. On one hand, the cat is calming herself as she prepares for sleep, lowering her own anxiety level. But on the other hand, and this is especially important, she most often does this specifically while she's next to you, not alone. A cat can perfectly well go to sleep by herself, in silence, without a single sound. But if she chooses to purr precisely when she's near you, it means your presence itself is part of her calming ritual. It's similar to how a small child starts breathing more calmly and falls asleep faster in the presence of a parent, even if that parent is just sitting there silently. The cat unconsciously syncs with your presence, and purring becomes the final note before she fully relaxes and drifts off to sleep. So that quiet, almost imperceptible sound you hear every evening isn't just the cat is content. It's a signal that next to you, she feels calm enough to let herself fully relax. Now, for a habit familiar to owners who've ever closed the bedroom door at night, the cat scratches, claws, sometimes meows loudly at the door, and some, especially persistent ones, even manage to slip a paw through the gap and push the door open themselves. Many owners find this annoying like a whim or stubbornness. But if you look deeper at this behavior, the picture looks quite different. Let's start with the fact that cats, contrary to the common stereotype about their total independence, actually form quite strong emotional attachments to their people. This is backed by a number of studies in animal behavior, where cats' attachment levels to their owners were compared to those of children with their parents. And one of the key signs of such attachment is separation anxiety. The discomfort an animal experiences when physically separated from a significant person, even if that separation lasts just a few hours behind a closed door at night. A closed door, for a cat, isn't just an obstacle. It's an abrupt and, to her, incomprehensible cutoff from you, her main source of safety, warmth, and social contact. In her perception, there's no logic like, my owner just wants to sleep alone. There's only the fact that the path to you is blocked. And scratching at the door is a direct, instinctive way of trying to solve that problem, to regain access to you. There's another nuance worth understanding. Unlike dogs, cats rarely show attachment demonstratively or persistently during the day. They can seem detached, independent, busy with their own affairs. That's exactly why nighttime behavior, when social filters and daytime independence fade, often gives a more honest picture of how attached a cat truly is to her owner. At night, in the dark and quiet, the instinct to stay close to the one who provides safety shows itself much more strongly and directly. There's also a practical side to this. If a cat suddenly starts scratching at the door aggressively, even though she used to sleep calmly alone in another room, this can sometimes signal rising anxiety, changes in her environment, or even discomfort, and in that case, it's worth paying her a bit more attention during the day. But in most cases, regularly scratching at the bedroom door is simply the most straightforward, honest way a cat has of saying, I want to be near you, and a closed door isn't okay with me. Then there's a habit that's probably one of the most underrated and at the same time one of the most touching. Some cats bring their owners gifts at night, a toy, a soft slipper, a balled up sock, sometimes even actual prey if the cat has access to the outdoors. The cat places this item right by your pillow, near your face, and sometimes even meows insistently, as if demanding attention for her offering. Many owners react to this with a smile or confusion, but rarely stop to think about where this behavior actually comes from. To understand its nature, we need to go back to the roots of feline instinct. In the wild, cats aren't pack hunters like wolves, but mother cats do teach their kittens to hunt by bringing them prey first dead, to show them the prey itself, then alive, so the kittens can practice hunting on their own. This is a fundamental, deeply ingrained evolutionary mechanism, sharing the results of a hunt with those you care for. Now apply this to a house cat. She usually doesn't have kittens to care for. But the instinct to share prey doesn't disappear. It simply gets redirected toward whoever the cat perceives as part of her family, her pack. And that someone turns out to be you. By bringing you a toy or a caught mouse at night, precisely when a cat's natural activity peaks, she's literally including you in her inner circle of care, the same way she would include kittens. There's another interesting detail here. Some animal behavior specialists note that cats who bring prey specifically to their owner, rather than just playing with a toy alone, more often show other signs of strong attachment as well, such as following their owner around the house, reacting to their voice, and trying to get their attention. In other words, this behavior rarely exists in isolation. It usually comes packaged with a whole set of loving habits. By the way, if your cat brings you a trophy and then meows loudly while standing next to it, some animal psychologists suggest this could be an attempt to get approval or praise, almost like a child showing a parent a drawing and waiting for a reaction. So next time you find a strange sock or a toy mouse under your pillow, don't rush to get annoyed. From the cat's point of view, it's not a mess, it's an act of generosity and trust. And here's the final habit, the simplest one at first glance, but in fact the deepest in meaning. It's about the cat simply watching you. Silently, motionlessly, sometimes for hours while you fall asleep, and sometimes even after you've already drifted off. At first glance, it seems like there's nothing to analyze here. She's just watching. Who knows what's going through her mind? But if you recall how feline psychology and its evolutionary roots work, this simple gaze turns into one of the most telling signals of them all. Let's start with the fact that in the wild, cats are both predators and potential prey for larger predators. Sleep is the most vulnerable moment for them, when their control over the situation is at its lowest. That's exactly why wild cats, when falling asleep, tend to choose safe, hidden spots and often sleep in shifts when living in groups, with one always staying alert. Now think about this. A house cat who doesn't sleep herself, but instead watches you fall asleep, is essentially taking on that very role, the role of a sentry. She's guarding you in the exact moment you're at your most vulnerable and defenseless. This isn't idle curiosity or boredom. It's a form of care, deeply encoded at the instinctive level, that shows up specifically toward those the cat considers part of her pack or family. There's a second aspect too, pure emotional attachment. Studies on animal behavior show that both cats and dogs can use what's called an attachment gaze, a prolonged, calm eye contact that, in humans and some animals, is linked to the release of oxytocin, the hormone of trust and closeness. Yes, this is the same mechanism at work between a parent and a child, between partners. A cat who gazes at you calmly for a long time as you fall asleep is literally experiencing a moment of emotional intimacy quietly, without words, without expecting anything in return. And perhaps the most touching part of all is that this gaze demands nothing from you in return. You don't always even notice it. You fall asleep, and the cat keeps watching. She's not waiting for praise, like with the gifts. She's not seeking warmth, like when she lies on your chest. She's simply there, simply watching, simply present in your life in this quiet nighttime moment. 7 habits. 7 completely different expressions from instinctive to deeply emotional. And if at least half of them sound familiar when it comes to your own cat, congratulations, you clearly mean far more to her than you ever imagined. Before we move on, it's worth pausing on one important point. What does science actually say about cats' attachment to people? For a long time, there was a persistent stereotype. Cats are independent, emotionally cold animals, living alongside humans more out of practical interest than genuine attachment. But over the past decade, a number of studies have seriously challenged that stereotype. One of the most well-known studies in this area used what's called the strange situation test, a method originally developed to study attachment between infants and parents, later adapted for dogs and cats. A cat would be placed in a new, unfamiliar room, first with her owner, then briefly left alone, and then the owner would return. Researchers tracked how the cat's behavior changed in each of these situations, her stress level, exploratory activity, and reaction to the person's return. The result surprised many skeptics. A significant portion of cats displayed behavior patterns nearly identical to what's known as secure attachment in children and dogs, meaning the cat used her owner's presence as a kind of safe base, becoming calmer and more confident, exploring the space specifically when the person was nearby, and showing signs of mild stress in their absence. Other studies focused on physiology showed that interaction with an owner petting, talking, simply being present lowers cortisol levels, the stress hormone, with the effect recorded on both sides, in the cat and in the human. Of course, it's important to understand that cats don't literally copy the dog model of attachment. Their attachment is expressed more subtly, more quietly, without dramatic displays of joy upon reunion. That's exactly why it went underestimated for so long. People looked for the same signs in cat behavior that they see in dogs, and not finding them, wrongly concluded there was no emotional bond at all. In reality, a cat's attachment is read not in leaping toward the door to greet you, but in exactly those quiet nighttime rituals we've been talking about in where she chooses to sleep, in what she does while you fall asleep. Science, in essence, is simply confirming what many attentive owners have sensed intuitively for a long time. To better understand just how deep a cat's attachment to a specific person can be, it's worth looking at one more interesting aspect, namely how differently a cat behaves toward different people in her environment. Because if all the behavior we've described were just a set of reflexes with no connection to personal attachment, a cat would behave the same way toward every member of the family. But in practice, that's far from the case. Observations of house cats in multi-person households show a clear pattern. Most of the nighttime rituals we've listed, sleeping by the head, lying on the chest, purring, watching over someone falling asleep, are displayed by the cat far from randomly. They're quite selective, usually directed at one specific person she singles out among the rest. That might be whoever spends the most time with her, feeds her, plays with her, speaks to her in a calm voice, but it's not always the person who's simply physically around the most. With people, the cat perceives as neutral, occasional guests, neighbors, distant relatives living in the same house, her behavior looks completely different. She may avoid physical contact, keep her distance, show no initiative to get close, and choose any other spot to sleep except near that person. That said, a cat won't necessarily show aggression or fear more often, it's simply calm indifference, an absence of that whole set of intimate nighttime rituals. This contrast is highly telling. If, say, kneading with paws or sleeping by the head were caused purely by room temperature or a convenient spot, a cat would display this behavior near anyone who happened to be in the right place. But she doesn't. She chooses consciously or instinctively the person with whom she feels the deepest emotional connection. What's more, animal psychologists note that the longer and more stable a cat's relationship with a particular person is, and the more that relationship consists of calm, predictable interaction without sudden, stressful episodes, the richer and more varied her nighttime displays of attachment tend to become. In other words, if your cat chooses you for all these rituals on our list, this isn't universal cat behavior that applies to just anyone in the household. It's a personal sign addressed to you specifically, that out of everyone around her, she chose you. And since we're on the subject of how selective feline attachment is, it's worth finally addressing one of the most persistent myths about cats overall, the myth of their complete emotional independence. You've probably heard the phrase before, cats live their own life, they don't really need an owner, as long as they're fed, and maybe you even believed it yourself at some point. This stereotype largely came from comparing cats to dogs. Dogs were originally domesticated as pack-oriented human helpers, and their behavior historically developed around constant interaction and adherence to a social hierarchy. Cats, on the other hand, were domesticated in a completely different way as independent hunters controlling rodent populations, living alongside humans for a long time without necessarily being in close emotional contact with them. This is where the image of the cat as a guest, rather than a family member, took hold. But domestication is an ongoing process. Modern house cats, especially those raised around people from an early age, form emotional bonds largely comparable to those of dogs, just expressed differently, more quietly, without dramatic displays. The problem isn't that cats don't form attachments. The problem is that people have spent years looking for dog-like markers of love in cat behavior, tail wagging, and enthusiastic greeting, and not finding them, concluded there were no feelings at all. In reality, as we've just discussed, a cat's attachment simply speaks a different language, the language of quiet nighttime rituals, selective behavior, physical closeness, specifically in moments of vulnerability, like sleep. And that language is no less sincere than a dog's excited greeting at the door. It just requires a bit more attentiveness from us to notice and correctly interpret it. Listening to all of this, some of you might be thinking, my cat doesn't do any of this. No kneading, no sleeping close by, no lying on my chest. And if that's you, please don't rush to feel disappointed. And definitely don't assume your cat doesn't love you. This deserves a closer look. First, every cat is an individual, and personality plays a huge role here. Some cats are naturally more reserved, less tactile, and show attachment in completely different ways. For example, simply staying in the same room as you, following you around the apartment, lying nearby but not right up against you, briefly rubbing against your legs instead of long snuggles. The absence of physical contact at night specifically doesn't always mean an absence of attachment. Sometimes it's just a different temperament. Second, a cat's history plays a huge role. Animals taken in from the streets as adults who've experienced stress, changes in ownership, or traumatic experiences often need much more time to learn to trust a person enough to allow themselves the vulnerability of sleeping close to them. This doesn't mean attachment is impossible, it just forms more slowly and may look completely different than in a cat who grew up in a calm, stable environment from birth. Third, it's worth considering the cat's age and health. Older cats, or animals with chronic conditions causing discomfort, often change their sleeping habits. It may be physically uncomfortable for them to jump onto the bed or lie in one position for a long time, and this has nothing to do with how attached they are to you. So what should you do if you recognize yourself in this description? The answer is simple. Don't force things. Don't try to physically hold your cat close or drag her onto the bed against her will. That will only deepen mistrust. Instead, create a calm, predictable environment. Spend time in quiet, non-intrusive interaction. Talk to your cat in a soft voice. Feed her yourself. Play with her regularly at the same time each day. Trust and attachment in cats build gradually, step by step, and what feels like distance today can very well turn into that same closeness after a few months of calm, stable interaction. If you want to do more than just wait for your cat to gradually open up on her own, and instead actively help strengthen your bond with her, there are several proven approaches grounded in an understanding of feline psychology that can help. First, and perhaps most important, is respecting your cat's pace. Cats, unlike dogs, respond very poorly to being pushed. Trying to pick up a cat against her will, holding her by force, cuddling her when she doesn't want it, all of this works in exactly the opposite direction, breaking down trust rather than building it. It's far more effective to let the cat initiate contact herself while you simply stay predictably available, sitting nearby without forcing things, and letting her approach when she's ready. The second important thing is what's known as the slow blink or cat kiss. If your cat is looking at you, blink slowly back at her, close your eyes a bit longer than usual, then open them again. For cats, This is a universal signal of trust and non-threat, essentially the equivalent of a friendly smile. Using this technique regularly genuinely helps cats relax around a person faster. Third is consistency and predictability in routine. Cats feel safe when the world around them is stable and predictable. Feeding at the same time each day, regular play sessions, a consistent daily schedule, all of this lowers a cat's overall anxiety level and, as a result, makes her more open to physical and emotional closeness, including at night. Fourth is play as a tool for building attachment. Playing together with toys that mimic prey, feather wands, laser pointers, toy mice on a string engages a cat's natural hunting instinct, while directly linking positive emotions to you as the one participating in that game. Regular play sessions, especially in the evening before bed, not only satisfy a cat's natural need for activity, but also strengthen the emotional bond. Fifth is physical contact on the cat's own terms. Start with areas most cats find comfortable: the base of the ears, the chin, the cheeks, avoiding the belly and tail if the cat hasn't yet shown full trust. Gradually, as trust grows, the zone of comfortable contact will expand naturally. And finally, sixth, patience and letting go of expectations. This might sound paradoxical, but the less you expect and demand immediate displays of love from your cat, the faster she typically starts showing it herself. Cats are remarkably sensitive to pressure and expectations from people, and releasing that invisible tension often becomes the deciding factor in a cat voluntarily choosing to sleep close to you. None of these approaches work instantly. We're talking about weeks, sometimes months, of gradually building trust. But it's worth it. This is exactly how those 7 habits we've talked about today come to be. Since we're on the topic of strengthening your bond with your cat, it's worth mentioning the flip side: 2 common mistakes owners make, often without realizing it, that gradually push a cat away, specifically at night. The first and most common mistake is abruptly and roughly waking a cat if she's in your way at night. Pushing her off, sudden movements, an irritated tone in the moment when the cat has simply settled in close to you. The cat remembers all of this as a negative experience tied specifically to nighttime closeness with you. Over time, this can lead her to avoid such situations altogether, choosing to sleep somewhere else instead. The second mistake is inconsistency. If you let your cat sleep on the bed today, but tomorrow, in a bad mood, abruptly kick her off, the cat can't build a clear sense of what's allowed and what isn't. This unpredictability creates anxiety, and anxiety, as we've already discussed, is a direct enemy of trust and closeness. The third mistake is using a spray bottle or other harsh training methods, specifically in moments tied to the bed or nighttime, for example, if the cat wakes you up too early. These methods might actually discourage the specific behavior, but at the same time, they create an association of anxiety specifically with the bed area and nighttime interaction with you in general. The fourth mistake, less obvious, is chronic stress in the household, which a cat picks up on even without it being directed at her. Frequent loud arguments, a chaotic, unpredictable schedule, too many guests, or too much noise in the house, all of this raises a cat's overall anxiety level, making it psychologically harder for her to fully relax and show the kind of vulnerability needed for those nighttime rituals of closeness. And the fifth mistake is a complete lack of attention and interaction during the day, in the hope that the cat will still show attachment at night anyway. Attachment doesn't work on a nighttime only schedule. It forms holistically throughout the entire day, through play, conversation, calm time spent together. If a cat feels ignored all day long, it's highly unlikely she'll suddenly decide to show deep emotional closeness, specifically at night. The good news is that all of these mistakes are completely fixable. All it takes is the desire to build a more mindful, calm, and stable relationship with your pet. Now that we've gone through all 7 habits, and even dug a bit deeper into the science, the psychology, the possible mistakes owners make, it's time to turn directly to you. Because all these observations, studies, and explanations matter, but things get really interesting when we connect them to personal experience. So here's the question for you. How many of these 7 habits does your own cat actually do? Maybe all 7 at once, in which case, honestly, you're incredibly lucky your cat has clearly chosen you as her most trusted person. Or maybe just one or two, and that's completely normal too, especially remembering everything we said about individual personality and each animal's unique history. I'm genuinely curious to hear your stories, because behind each of these habits is something very personal. Maybe your cat doesn't just need the blanket, but does it exclusively on one particular item, say, only on your sweater? Maybe she doesn't just sleep by your head, but has chosen one specific side of the pillow and never changes it. Or maybe she has some completely unique nighttime habit that wasn't even on our list, and honestly, that's very likely. Because cats, for all the similarities in their basic instincts, manage to show remarkable individuality. Write in the comments which of these 7 signs you recognized in your own cat's behavior. And if there's an 8th one, something unique of your own, definitely share it. I and other viewers would genuinely love to read it. Maybe the most interesting stories in the comments could turn into a separate video, featuring real examples from you, our viewers, instead of just general observations and theory. And of course, if you have photos or short videos of these moments your cat needing or watching over you as you sleep, share those too. It would be lovely to see them. Details like that make this community feel alive, not just a collection of viewers on one channel. Alright, now let's sum up everything we've talked about today. And speaking of your stories, a quick little poll right here in the video. If your cat sleeps next to you every single night, like this video right now. If she prefers to sleep separately but still shows attachment in other ways, tell us about it in the comments. I'd genuinely love to hear more examples. And if you've made it this far and recognized your cat in at least 3 out of these 7 signs, drop a cat emoji in the comments. Let's see how many of us truly cat-loved people there are under this video. So now you know 7 things your cat does at night, and what's really behind each of them. From instinctive paw kneading to silently watching over your sleep, these are all different facets of one simple truth. Your cat thinks about you far more than it might seem at first glance. If you found this video helpful, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss future breakdowns of cat behavior. And in the next video, we'll explore why cats sometimes seem distant or aloof instead, and what might really be behind that behavior. See you then, behavior. See you then, behavior. See you then, behavior. See you then, behavior.